In 1972, Geraldo Rivera took a hidden camera onto the grounds of the Willowbrook State School in Staten Island, New York. What he uncovered was horrific abuse and neglect of adults and children with intellectual and developmental disabilities. As a result of his exposé, Congress held hearings, and at the end of those hearings concluded that the states were just incapable of providing the necessary oversight to people with disabilities living in these institutions. As a result, the P&A system was born. I was almost 12 years old when I watched his exposé on TV that day. 18 years later, I joined the P&A as a staff attorney in Albany, New York.
I came to DRNY 4 years ago precisely because I wanted to continue the work that began when Geraldo Rivera shined a light on those individuals who had been left, discarded, placed in darkness inside Willowbrook.
I was aware of the events of Willowbrook from a very young age. Because of my father's work, I spent a lot of my childhood at or around state institutions like Willowbrook. One of my stronger memories is watching legal advocates tour one of these facilities. I saw the impact that legal advocacy had on changing the system to a more inclusive model of services. That memory reminds me of the importance of advocacy. Advocacy, not just as a tool to hold a system accountable, but also as a partner in pushing for change.
I would say the events at Willowbrook affect me very personally because I know that my disabilities, cerebral palsy in particular, would be included in the disabilities that some of the residents had. I know that I could have very easily have been one of the residents at Willowbrook and not treated well, not treated with compassion, kindness, humanity, none of that. I could have, in another time and place, been one of those residents, and that realization doesn't escape me.
Willowbrook was a real game changer for people with disabilities. For the first time, a bright light was shown on what happens when we shut people with disabilities behind closed doors. The atrocities that happen there can never happen again, and yet too often we do see elements of what happened there in the lives of the people we serve.
Willowbrook represents what can happen if folks like us aren't out there making sure that people with disabilities are protected and making sure that their voices are heard.
The hope I have for the work that we do in the future is that we will not have to do the work we do. And by that I mean that all the services would exist for all disabilities, all people of all kinds to be able to benefit from services, have access to those services, having full and equal, equitable access to education, employment, transportation.
Today, people are still institutionalized and segregated. Today, people are still subject to abuse and neglect in settings where they should be cared for and supported. Today, people with developmental disabilities in New York State are still subject to an archaic guardianship law that strips them of all their rights while denying them the constitutional protections in the process of taking away those rights. These are things that still need to change.
The reality is that while there has been progress, there are still too many conversations that take place every day in this state, in this nation, where people are making decisions for people with disabilities, and the folks with disabilities are not there at the table, to explain how that's going to impact on their daily lives and their very well-being. So that I'm optimistic about the next 50 years of disability rights advocacy, but I see how much work there is that has to be done. And I think we need to keep looking carefully at all the systems that are not compatible with each other, are not operating successfully together to fulfill the needs of people with disabilities.
It's been almost 50 years since the Willowbrook exposé. There have been some changes since that time, but certainly not enough. Please join us over the course of this year for us to provide you with information and expand on our advocacy efforts to make the road to inclusion a reality.